Iran's ambassador to London today said that he believes Saudi Arabia is trying to draw America into a conflict with his country. Is that true?
That's ridiculous. Saudi Arabia has made it very clear that we want to avoid war at all costs. So has the United States, so has the United Arab Emirates. The escalation has always been from the Iranian side, and we hope that they will change their aggressive behavior and act like a normal country.
What should we be preparing ourselves? We've had these tanker attacks, we have an American military build-up, and then we have this attack on the drone today. Should we be ready for war?
We're trying to avoid war at all costs. We are consulting with our allies and our friends to see what options we have and what steps can be taken in order to deter Iran. Iran has to understand that this aggressive behavior is not sustainable.
But is it getting closer, conflict, do you think?
We hope not, but if the Iranians keep acting in this direction, then they're the ones who are escalating. Sending drones to attack pipelines and attacking ships and threatening freedom of navigation in one of the world's most critical water passageways that has an impact on the price of oil and that has an impact on the supply of energy and that has an impact on the global economy is not acceptable. Providing ballistic missiles to terrorist groups like the Houthis and Hezbollah is not acceptable. Planting terror cells in other countries is not acceptable. Assassinating diplomats and blowing up embassies is not acceptable. Iran must understand this. That's why it's under sanctions. It's not under sanctions because they didn't do anything.
But your argument to America, as I understand it, was that Iran needs to be put back in a box, maximalist policy needs to be applied, and yet since that's been applied, Iran, you're saying, is getting more and more out of hand. That is not working, is it?
Well, we have to see how it moves forward. The JCPOA was signed. People thought Iran would become a normal country. It didn't. They took the resources and used it for evil. I don't recall them building one hospital or one road in Iran, but we saw them doubling down in Syria and in Yemen. So obviously the funds went for evil purposes, not good purposes. Now that the United States has taken a firm position against Iran, which we support, we believe that the pressures are going to increase tremendously on Iran in order to force them to change their policies.
People ask me a lot at the moment, should we be ready for war? Is war coming? How worried are you?
You're always worried about things getting out of control, but we have made it very clear that we want to avoid war at all costs, and we have made it very clear, as has the United States, and really the burden is on Iran to stop its aggressive behavior.
Moving on to another subject, the British Court of Appeals today has ruled that future arms sales licences will have to be suspended. That's a major setback for you and the UK government, isn't it?
It's a domestic British matter that has to do with licensing, and I believe the court wants the British government to make changes to its licensing process, and I believe the British government will do so, and then I believe we will get to a point where the licensing will resume.
But it is the product of years of lobbying by MPs, human rights organisations, NGOs, activists. You're losing the moral argument over Yemen, aren't you?
We have taken a hit on Yemen, definitely. I believe it's because people have not looked at it objectively. We did not start this war, the Houthis did. We entered 9 months after it started at the request of the legitimate government based on UN Resolution 2216. We have made it very clear that the solution in Yemen is a political one, and yet we're blamed for it. We don't use child soldiers, the Houthis do. We don't plant mines, the Houthis do. We don't lay siege on towns and villages and starve people, the Houthis do. We don't steal humanitarian assistance and sell it for profit that causes the World Food Programme to suspend distribution of food in Yemen, the Houthis do. We don't lob ballistic missiles at towns and villages, the Houthis do. And yet the world has given the Houthis a pass, and this is not, I believe, neither fair nor acceptable nor accurate. We have supported every agreement that was made since this crisis began, as has the Yemeni government, and the Houthis have reneged on every single one of them. So who's to blame here? Are we to allow Yemen, a critically important country, to be taken over by Iran and Hezbollah? That's not an option. That would be catastrophic, not just for Saudi Arabia, but for the world.
On Khashoggi and this UN Special Rapporteur report yesterday, I know you're saying that she's biased and you're not happy with the report, but it does say that every expert consulted finds it inconceivable that an operation of this scale could be implemented without the Crown Prince being aware, at a minimum, that some sort of mission of a criminal nature directed at Mr Khashoggi was being launched. The problem is it's not just the UN, is it? It's the CIA, it's Republicans in Congress, it's foreign intelligence agencies, all saying that your Crown Prince had an involvement in this.
I don't believe that they're saying this. I think that's what people attributed to them. There is no evidence. The idea that the Crown Prince was responsible for this or directed it is ridiculous. We have denied it. We said this is not the case. The Abu Ghraib happened. Was the President of the United States aware of it? No, he wasn't. Iran-Contra happened. Was Ronald Reagan aware of it? No. These are rogue operations. We have made it very clear that we will investigate and we will hold people accountable and we will punish those responsible. And we now have a number of individuals on trial in Saudi Arabia, 5 of whom are facing the death penalty. We have reviewed the procedures of our intelligence service to ensure that mechanisms are in place to prevent something like this from happening again.
But what this report is saying is that your Crown Prince should be amongst the men in the dock, effectively. And Lindsey Graham, one of your greatest friends in Washington, says, we will make a definitive statement that MBS knew about it and is responsible for it. And the CIA has said that they have high confidence the order to kill came from the very top. How can you keep denying this?
I don't believe that's the case. The CIA had high confidence that Saddam Hussein had chemical weapons. It didn't turn out to be correct. We are investigating. The investigation is ongoing. The trials are ongoing. People will be held responsible and people will be punished. Let
me ask you, or put to you what some people say to me, which is that Saudi Arabia says it's changing. I think you said to us a year or so ago, Saudi Arabia is becoming a normal country. It won't be long before it's like lots of other countries. Since then, you have murdered, your government, agents at least, have murdered a journalist in one of your consulates. You are accused of beheading or planning to behead and crucify activists, some of them who were children when they were arrested. You're still holding women activists who've lobbied and campaigned for women to be able to drive. What's going on? Have we been conned by this idea that Saudi Arabia is modernising and changing?
I think this is misinformation. The women who were held because of recruiting people in sensitive government positions in order to take documents and give them to hostile powers outside of Saudi Arabia. This is the reason. It's not because of activism. Why would you want to jail a woman who advocates for women driving when the king lifted the ban on women driving?
Well, that's what people want to know. So why are they still being held?
Because this judgment is based on wrong information. The idea that Saudi Arabia would execute an individual for a crime he committed when he was 13 is ludicrous. Our laws prohibit this. But where did it come from? The court issued a judgment that says 12 years, including time served, which I believe is 5 years, with 4 years suspended. How people jump to the conclusion and say Saudi Arabia is going to execute somebody for a crime they committed when they're 13 is beyond me. People seem to fire first and ask questions next when it comes to Saudi Arabia.
So this is all just bad PR, is it?
Partly I think we have to explain ourselves better. Partly I believe that people need to be less biased when it comes to Saudi Arabia. For some reason, just like with the Houthis, we are portrayed as monsters and they're portrayed as angels. But when you look at the facts, they're the cause of the problem in Yemen, but we get the blame.
But Saudi agents murdered a journalist in a consulate,
and
the world should just move on?
We acknowledged it. It was a rogue operation. It was not authorized. An investigation was launched. Individuals were detained. The trials are ongoing, and those who are responsible will be punished severely. This is what countries do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.